What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Panthers Insider, and I'm your host, Arian. This is an introductory video of the channel, and we're just going to do a little brief overview of the 2023-2024 season, just to kind of familiarize yourself with my content, and then just get my takes on how the last few years have gone for the Panthers as a fan. So let's get right into it. Brief overview of the 2023-2024 season. In 2023, we took a guy you may have heard of before named Bryce Young to be our next quarterback of the future. Overall, people really like Bryce Young. He's a great draft prospect. The only downside that people were really concerned about with him was his size. He's about 5'10", and I think maybe 200 pounds at the time when he got drafted. I think he did put on a little bit of weight before draft night. And the thing with Bryce, and I think that a lot of people lost track of this, is that Bryce Young, sure, was he undersized as a quarterback? Yeah, I mean, 5'10" is, for an NFL quarterback, it's not too often that you see guys this under 6 foot, maybe 6'1", 6'2", below that, that really do well. And I think where a lot of people stood on this was Carolina is notorious for having bad offensive line. And at the time, our offensive line was pretty bad. You're putting an undersized guy behind a really bad offensive line. And what is going to happen? Will he hold up? Will he be damaged mentally by the amount of hits that he could take as a rookie, and will he be broken and never be able to be fixed? There was a lot of concerns with this pick, but there was a lot of people that also really liked it. But Bryce Young was the pick, and from there, we gave up a lot to get him because we wasn't picking number 1 overall that year. We were actually picking number 9. So we had to trade up to get our guy because Chicago was... word on the street was Chicago wanted him and Chicago was going to take him. Now, whether that's true or not, nobody will really ever know, I don't think. But at least that's what I've heard. So, what did we have to give up to trade up to number 1 to get our guy? Well, we had to give up our 9th overall pick that year. We had to give up our 2nd round pick that year, which was 61st overall. We had to give up our 2024 first round pick, and then our 2025 second round pick, along with, and I didn't even include it on the slide, so I'm actually kind of surprised that I remembered this, but we also had to give up our star wide receiver in DJ Moore. And that's a lot to give up for one guy that you hope will be your guy, but you really don't know, right? The draft, you want to draft player, you want to draft talent, you want to draft, skill set, obviously. You want to draft what type of person they are. But that doesn't always translate. So it's a gamble. And the results were not instantaneous. We went 2-15 that year. Horrendous years offensively and defensively. Looking at this chart here, you're talking we're in the worst offensive in the league here with, points per game was 23, yards per game was 29. Now keep in mind this number's out of 23 and 29. That's out of the 32 teams that exist in the NFL. So, and then defensively, darn near last in every single column that we can get stats on. It was really one of those years where you just sit back and you go, what in the world happened? You hired this new head coach, Frank Reich, who, it was a little bit of a story hire, right? And so he was one of the first quarterbacks that we had, and bringing him home to kind of coach his team that historically one of the worst seasons ever. That 2010 season was pretty bad, but as far it was this one right here, 2023, was pretty darn close. Bryce Young looked terrible, just to put it bluntly. It looked awful. Completion percentage was 59.8%. He had 2,800 yards, a little over that. 11 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. This number right here is what I want to highlight to everyone, though. This sacked 62 times. His rookie year. That is mind-boggling. That is atrocious. And especially hearing from Scott Fitterer, where we got our, if you remember during his press conferences and stuff a lot that year, he was talking about, well, we got our left tackle in Icky, and we got a couple pieces, for him, and now we just want to drop our quarterback in. Well, we dropped him in all right. We dropped him in right behind enemy lines apparently, because this guy was sacked like darn near every time he took a drop back, and you really feel bad for the kid because he can't be this bad. QBR 34.1%, rating 73.7. It was, it was a rough year. It was rough to see that, which, that led to the firing of Deuce Staley, the running back coach, Josh McCown, quarterback coach, and Frank Reich, head coach. So firing of Frank Reich and company. Everybody was gone. There was just no, it didn't seem like they were on the same page. They just didn't seem like it was a dumpster fire, to say the least, about the situation. And Bryce Young walked into this and didn't even know what he was walking into. Thought he was walking into a great coaching staff, and that's what everybody talks about that year too. How great of a coaching staff we built, and it got us 2-15. Also fired Scott Fitterer, the GM at the time, and this was bound to happen. It didn't happen initially, like during the season. I believe they finished out the season, and then Tepper told Fitterer basically that it's over. So Scott Fitterer getting fired was, it was due. Moving into the 2024 offseason, the Panthers made some changes, and they made some very interesting changes. They hired a new GM in Dan Morgan, and he's a former Panthers player. He was around beginning stages of the franchise, and he's an embodiment of what it means to be a Panther. He knows what keep pounding means. He knows what the culture should be like. So to me, this hire was amazing. I love this hire. I know there's some people that was kind of, he was, people would say, oh, well, he was the assistant GM to Scott Fitterer at the time. And so, how many of these picks were his picks, or how, what was his say on a lot of these picks, these situations with players and free agency and the draft and in different situations. And the truth is, well, we'll never really know. To me, I think this team for years lacked culture. They didn't have a culture. They didn't have an identity. Yeah, we were the Carolina Panthers and we have our logo, but a true identity of a team of this is how we're going to play it, and a culture. And every great team, in my opinion, has to have a culture. If you look at the Kansas City Chiefs, they have a culture. If you looked at, New England Patriots when they had Brady, they had a culture. And I feel that Dan Morgan is a culture creator, and he was a great hire for the GM role. So shout out to David Tepper for this hire. And with that, what we did next was hire a new head coach, and we got Dave Canales. And he brought with him Brad Idzik. Dave Canales was the offensive coordinator for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Brad Idzik was on that offensive staff with Dave Canales, and Dave Canales and him go back a long way. And so he brings him along with him. He also retained Ejiro Rivero. As I have mentioned earlier, the defense in 2023 was atrocious. And it was again in 2024. Rivero is a good defensive coordinator. I just think he lacked a lot of good talent around him. If you look back to days when he was in Denver, he ran a really good defense. And so keeping him around, Canales talked real highly of him. And I think keeping him around at least keeps continuity on one side of the football. And I think that especially when there's a head coaching change, any kind of continuity that you can keep, you have to keep it around. And I think Dave Canales made a great decision here in keeping Evero. But unfortunately, we had to make a decision to part ways with a player that we drafted in 2019 in Brian Burns, a.k.a. Spider-Man. We traded him to the New York Giants for a 2024 second-round pick and a 2025 fifth-round pick. Now, this guy, Brian Burns, was a phenomenal player. He really excelled. He was a great pass rusher, the leader on the defense, and it was one of those things where we hated to see him go. And some people thought this compensation was not good enough, and unfortunately, it wasn't for the type of player that they're getting. But you have to remember, you were trading this player when he wanted a new contract. And if a team that's going to trade for a player that wants a new contract, and it was a big contract too, I think it was north of $27 million a year. When a player wants a contract and the team has to trade for him, they're not going to give you as much trade value as if maybe he had a couple more years on his deal, on a rookie deal. They're just not going to give you that trade value. And into the first half of the 2024 season, it was not good. Started 0-2. Bryce Young got benched after week 2, and Andy Dalton, the backup QB, the veteran, really didn't look much better other than the Las Vegas Raiders game, I think in week 3. So it looked like another terrible year, and another year of, wow, Bryce Young really looks bad. I don't know if he's the guy. But in week 8, things started taking a turn, and a turn for the better. Bryce Young came back in week 8 because Andy Dalton had a car accident, if you remember, or if you weren't aware. And really, Bryce was looking good, man. I mean, he had composure in the pocket. You looked at him and he looked like he belonged. Prior to that, he was running scared all the time and just not making good decisions. He looked different after his benching. That's where, there was some light. And, he started getting some of his Bama Bryce swag back. And he started feeling confident. And a lot of, I feel that was his problem, was getting sacked 62 times your rookie year does not help you. But I also think that never really went away. In the back of his mind, I think he was always thinking, when am I going to get hit? And it's hard to focus on what your job is as a quarterback when you're thinking, when am I going to get hit? Granted, you're going to get hit, but you just kind of have to play like you can't think about it, right? One of the eye-catching stats that I had to talk about was this right here. In 2020, for 2024 stats, he was first in big-time throws from week 9 to week 16 with a big-time throw percentage at 7.6%. And what is a big-time throw? Well, it's defined as passes with excellent ball location and timing, generally thrown further downfield and or into a tighter window. He was also 5th in passing grades when facing pressure. But this stat right here, it stuck out to me for a number of reasons. This quarterback went through a lot. But then when he came back, he was playing with a different confidence. And when you play with confidence and you're an elite player, if you don't have confidence, I don't care how skillful you are, if you don't have confidence in yourself to make the throws or to make plays, you're not going to perform to your peak levels. And I think Bryce Young, when he came back from his benching, he had more confidence than he had prior. That right there is just one of the things that I wanted to talk about as reasons why I think Bryce Young is the guy. I legitimately think that if Bryce Young has this thing figured out, then hey, the sky is the limit, man. Because this kid has talent. This kid has everything you need: processing ability, accuracy. He can do it all. And as long as he can stay healthy, dude, the sky is the limit for this kid. But that's why I say, 2024 was a tough season, but we have a lot to be hopeful for. 2025, we have a top 10 first-round pick and 8 other picks in the draft, more cap space, more experienced GM and head coach that can build continuity through the offseason. It's quite amazing to me what this team can have the opportunity to do. And we'll talk about more of that in our next video when we talk about the 2025 season, what's going on, what's happened, and what our expectations are. So, with that being said, that's going to do it for today's video. If you have any recommendations, please feel free to leave a comment down below, and I'll take it under advisement. Leave a like and let me know if you, like the content. And if you want to see more, just click that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next video.